Well, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Cemetery Board. I'm Dan Shapiro, and I am Secretary of State Sabra Bradley's designated chair.
Bob Welch, representing Dr. Naraf Shah, Commissioner of Health.
And Chris Wiles, representing the Attorney General, Eric Schneider.
Chet Butkowitz, Assistant Director, Division of Cemeteries.
Mike Seelman, Senior Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Len Green, Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Suzanne Dressel, Clerk, Division of Cemeteries.
Joe Ambrose, Associate Accountant, Division of Cemeteries.
Tony Melillo, Counsel to the Cemetery Board.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Why don't we get right to it? Have we had an opportunity to review the minutes of the previous meeting?
Yes.
Any changes, comments, suggestions?
I thought they were good. I have none.
None.
Yay.
Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. All right. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Melillo, legislation and regulation.
Yep, no new legislation yet.
Okay.
Regarding our draft regs, the pet cemetery regs, we did receive a comment just this week from a pet cemetery association, critical of the proposed regs.
Okay.
It enumerated a number of issues it had with it. So we'll be...
Yeah, we need to provide some chairs. Let's see. All right. Let me just finish this part, then I'm going to find some chairs for you. Yeah.
Do we need these two?
Yeah, pull them.
Oh,
Just,
yeah, there you go.
Look, it's informal. Okay. There you go. You're good, Dave. Thank you. I'm sorry. So we have a critical comment that
Right.
you'll
That I'll be
apprise us of.
responding to.
Mhm, okay.
Okay. Also on the regs that have been circulated, the accounting regs, NISAC, as you were handed earlier, has some comments on
Right.
that.
Right. So are you going to?
I'll be reviewing those comments and then
perhaps
so we can
incorporate
discuss them next
and
month.
Discuss them. Okay. So, but all right. So we'll have a quasi-final draft prior to the next meeting, and
Circulate, right.
and we'll be ready to chat about it. Okay. All right. Good things take time. Metro Butkowitz, what you got?
Well, the financial regs that Tony just mentioned, I was going to be basically the same thing that the NISAC has, come back with some response, but it'll be more formal, I suppose. The other is one of our cemeteries has been reached out to by a community foundation, which proposes to help not-for-profits or other entities within the community, county-based, and help with their investments and perhaps donations to achieve what their goals are.
Who is there? The cemetery's goals or the not-for-profit?
The cemetery goals.
Okay.
And so, both Tony and Joe did some research on this, and
Yeah, I asked that it be shown to the board. It's the name of the organization is the Community Loan Fund, I believe.
correct.
They've been around a long time. I'm personally familiar with them because I used to be on a board of a charity. They're an established organization. This one is Orange and Sullivan County. They provide funding and assistance to other charities.
Mhm.
They're not for profit. They
You're
provide
organized to do
assistance.
that, all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So what they're proposing is to take trust funds and invest them for the cemetery. They pool them, invest them, and give them a return. One of my concerns was that these are trust funds. They have to remain protected as trust funds.
Mhm.
They can't be subject to lawsuits, garnishment, other. So they've altered. Is this the redlined?
No, the red line version.
So they actually made changes to their proposed contract. So I wanted the board to know that this is something. How many cemeteries have been approached?
Oh, just the one so far, but on an ongoing basis, we have cemeteries asking us,
Can I put the red line?
this is the red line version.
So they
you know,
did-
how do we invest our money? How do we get more bang for the buck? You know, why can't we use capital gains? You know, interest and dividends we're not getting enough to help with maintenance and preservation of the cemetery. So it sounds like this community foundation, this particular one is for Orange and Sullivan County, is, I guess, collectively using funds to get a better rate of return, I suppose. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but so for myself, it requires a little more research, but I don't know if
So they're proposing to be sort of conjoined trust fund manager.
Right.
And do they, well, it's not their investment, right? They're arm's length from the investments that they make on behalf of the charities.
Correct.
So they could be really, they're akin to a manager for a money manager, right? And is there any, I mean, I'm sure that some cemeteries have money managers, independent contractors who manage their funds, is that right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
yes,
I mean,
correct,
there's
right.
no prohibition against that.
Right.
So we're not dealing with a legal prohibition, we're dealing with a not-for-profit offering itself up to do that, and we're sort of prophylactically taking a look at this to make sure that
Right.
the permanent maintenance fund is protected as it should be according to law.
Right.
Okay?
Right. That was the concern of the cemetery that came to us was, would they be violating any of their obligations under the trust requirements if they invested through this entity?
Okay? And,
I feel pretty comfortable with what's been presented.
okay?
Well, are there restrictions on these foundations as to what they can what they can pay out?
How do you mean?
Well, I've seen it in a number of situations because the foundation has to comply with the IRS stuff. That it's not you don't get your money necessarily when you want it. Sometimes restricted to 5%, or sometimes has to go back to the foundation board for approval on a regular or ordinary withdrawal. Those kinds of things. Did that pop up anywhere
No,
from the foundation?
no.
You know, is this something maybe, is this a charity? Is the foundation a
Yes.
registered charity?
They are
They
registered
are-
with the Attorney General's
Right,
office.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe it would be a really good idea for us to just
Check it
chat
out.
with charities.
They usually also have a contract, which is the key, the foundation with the charity.
Right. And
Right,
that's
that's
what
what
we got
here,
that's
yeah.
what we're
Is that the
presenting.
red line one?
Yeah. Well, both.
Both.
One is,
Tony.
the red line shows how they've changed it to address the issue that these are trust funds that they'd be receiving. So initially, it didn't address that issue, and now, because it was raised, they've altered. So the red line shows how the contract was changed.
And generally, the divisions, cautions cemetery managers to say that, if you have funds invested with an advisor, you still need to understand what that advisor is investing cemetery assets in.
But I still have their
You
fiduciary
can't-
obligations,
Yeah, you
right,
can't
right,
absolve
of
yourself
course.
of the fiduciary responsibility.
right.
So also too, the old saying.
Sorry, I'm not going to answer it. It's my daughter Molly, for everybody to know, I'm sure. Want me to prove it? Wait a minute. It's Molly, see? Okay.
We need a picture of that.
Done.
Also too, like most of them know, you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. That's the other thing.
So
Wouldn't want to see all the trust funds.
And that would be something we would advise the cemetery on.
Correct.
And counsel them, and that's something we will do. But, I think it would be a good idea, I think Chris would agree, for you to touch base with charities. Just make sure that
Right.
this is an appropriate, I'm sure it's fine, but
Okay.
if there's any restrictions on payout or whatever, we should know and the cemetery should know, okay? If that's a problem for the administration of trust funds, then it's a problem.
Okay.
But no action for the board, this is by way of
No, it's
information.
just information.
Any other questions or anything? Just let us know what you hear, from the Attorney General. Okay, very good.
there's some extra copies of the Community Foundation report if anybody wants them.
I'm
fine. Vandalism,
Oh, well, we
Vandalism.
have,
unless you have
I'm
something else.
sorry, there, I should have, I had all good intentions of sending out the amended agenda, because there's this and there's that.
Which one?
Got that one.
Yeah, let's do vandalism first, because that's sort of business.
Okay,
Let's do,
okay.
you know,
All right, very good. Vandalism report. I'm good, I'm so organized. Today, anyway. For the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014,
Can I have an extra copy? You have an extra copy there?
I do,
Here, I just want
but you can only hold it on.
to, you know. All right, go ahead.
Don't get too comfortable. You're gonna have to give this to one of Dave. For the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014, vandalism fees collected were $32,050. Applications granted were $444,955. Applications pending are $545,454. Of the applications granted, 3 were for vandalism, totaling $31,120. 14 applications were approved for restoration, $361,688, and 12 were for abandoned cemeteries, $52,147.
Very good. Thank you.
Welcome. That goes
All
to
right.
Dave.
Oh, another one with special interest. Very good. All right, so we have, on the amended agenda, some good news in that we have a candidate for the division director slot, which was so unfortunately recently vacated by Mr. Fishman. And the gentleman's name is Mr. Louis Polishuk, who Chris probably has some particular knowledge of. Yeah, you don't? Okay. So Louis,
Other than what I saw.
Louis has been a counsel in the Attorney General's office for some time, and appears to be a perfect candidate to keep the fight going and to do the good work that Richard did. I've circulated the resume. The board has an obligation to appoint the director. Do we have any conversation or issues with respect to that?
No.
No.
Okay,
I would move to confirm the appointment.
wonderful.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Just to clarify that, since the board also has to set the length of the term and the salary, that should
I
probably be
thought
part of
the
the.
length was statutorily prescribed at 6 years.
That's true.
Yeah, and the salary will do an executive session.
Okay.
Do I have to do an effective date on the motion?
Yeah. His position, in speaking with Human Resources, is scheduled to begin November 12th. If you want to make that part.
So amended?
So amended.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. I look forward. Of course, I've met Mr. Polishuk. He seems like a truly committed guy, and he has a deep interest in cemetery practice. So I think we all look forward to having him come on board.
Will he be working in Albany or
He'll be
based in Albany, I should say, or
He's going to be
someplace
based in New York City,
New York City.
but he's
Okay.
going to be coming to Albany on a consistent basis.
Okay.
So, and we'll see. You know, folks shape the job according to
Mhm.
their desires, and we'll see how it works out. But I think it's going to be great. All right. What's the next on the agenda? Whitehaven Cemetery, and Whitehaven is here. So, at last
had,
board meeting,
What do you want to do?
The vandalism and repair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vandalism,
Remind me.
absolutely. We've got a couple. Okay. Where is my vandalism?
Yeah,
I was okay with both of them.
Yeah, I was too. There was Bell and the other
Highland.
one, Highland. Yeah, were there any comments on the claims?
27 and 3, no.
Any conversation? All right. More motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now Whitehaven. All right, so at last board meeting, we approved the land purchase subject to council's review and the division's review, fiscal attendant to that, to the transaction. And Tony thought that this should come back to the board for an update. I don't know which one of you would like to present. Maybe that's you, Tony. In fact,
Yeah,
do it.
sure. When the board approved this conditionally, one of the issues, probably the main issue that the board wanted addressed was the fact that this was pulling money out of the PM fund and the cemetery was losing the opportunity to earn income interest on the funds. It was about $200,000 was being borrowed. And the accounting review indicates that there are, in fact, substantial loans out of the PM fund. So there's significant funds that are already out of the PM fund, not earning income or interest. So I didn't feel comfortable approving this without having that fact brought to the board and having the board look at the financials.
Right.
And also the general fund has substantial loans against it. And it actually only has cash in the general fund of $212,000. And in addition to loans in the PM fund, part of the PM fund has been used to purchase land share certificates that the cemetery is obligated on. And Whitehaven's here and can explain the purpose of that better than I think I can. But I believe that their intention is to get those retired, to get out from under those land share certificates.
Yeah, historically, and I'm sure Richard may have had a hand in that, but historically the board has advocated the retirement of land share certificates because land share certificates can best control in folks who may have personal gain in mind and not the best interests of the cemetery. And that's a fact, but it's the way the cemeteries were financed in their inception. And also, of course, there's an expense to carrying the land share certificates. So it's been condoned, that kind of transaction, and I'm sure that was what Whitehaven was doing. We'll let them talk to that. But before that, I'd like Joe. Can you talk to us about the finances, the ability to do this, what you think should happen, and whether this is a fiscally sound move for the cemetery?
They obviously have the cash flow consistent year to year to finance the loan, to pay for it. As Tony mentioned, they don't have a lot of liquidity in their general fund, which is why they're probably going to the PM fund. I don't think they're going to lose a lot of interest on that small amount of money, the way rates are today. It actually looks like a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Is there, in terms of the cash flow, is there any ability for Whitehaven to accelerate payment? You mentioned in the report, I think proposed a 20-year payback, and you were advocating for a truncated payback, is what you said, of 10 years.
But did you have an objection to that, or you didn't think you could do that?
Well, the 20-year payback makes sense for several reasons, and most particularly because, as we explained last time, the reason for the purchase of the land, it's not that we desperately need the land, we won't be developing it for probably 50 years. It's to protect the view of Canandaigua Lake that is so important to the saleability of lots within the cemetery. So first and foremost is protecting the view, and then there's adding to inventory. But speaking of inventory, I'd like to say that it is the absolute best investment that one can make with one's permanent maintenance fund anytime you create inventory, because of all the statutory deposits that are going to come back into the permanent maintenance fund because of the creation of that inventory. The current projections for Canandaigua Lakeview anticipate over $9 million in total revenue, and from
For how many
10%.
For how many years? Over the course of how many?
It's a 40-year projection on the 6 acres that are on the existing part of the cemetery. It should generate $1 million into the permanent maintenance fund, from property sales and from burials there. And this land will now double that inventory, meaning it'll add an additional $1 million over the course of its life, permanent maintenance fund. There's no stock or bond you can buy that'll give you that kind of a return. That's a 10-time return on your money, $100,000 to deliver $1 million over time into the PM fund. So, I just, want to make that clear that it's the best use of permanent maintenance fund money to do that. The 20-year payback time, I just feel makes it easier for the cemetery to continue to do what it needs to do to generate current revenues, since these revenues are kind of come down in the future after we finally develop it. So it's, from an accounting standpoint, a better matching principle to spread it out. That's why we wanted to spread it out and leave, as I say, as much money available in cash flow to do what we want to do, including one of the things that we're planning to do is put a maintenance building on that site. And that, we will try to finance on a cash basis out of the general fund. So, by combining these things, the maintenance building is something we can use right now. And I'm happy to spend general fund money to do something that we can use and benefit from right now. But the longer term investment that'll yield the longer term benefit of the permanent maintenance fund, I think it only makes sense to spread it out over 20 years.
I mean, obviously, nobody could disagree that purchasing land which will yield the kind of yield that you're talking about is not a good thing, and that's why we approved it. There is a reluctance always, as you know, to condone loans from the permanent maintenance fund, a reluctance because the board wants to see that fund continue and grow. That the purchase of the land will augment the permanent maintenance fund ultimately is great, but of course that money could come from somewhere else, then you wouldn't have the permanent maintenance loan at all. It could come from somewhere else, permanent maintenance fund would be inviolate and happy, and it would still grow. But I understand. But if you don't, but
in 30 years of doing this, I've never missed a single payment.
Right.
And every loan we've ever borrowed has been paid back.
Yeah, nobody's questioning that. Right.
I know some cemeteries haven't been that diligent or that fortunate, whichever. But we have. And I'd also like to comment on some of the information about the purchase of the land shares. And as you mentioned, with the express knowledge and enthusiastic encouragement of the division on the parts of both Mr. Itzo, who I started the process with back in 1994, and Mr. Fishman, they very much wanted us to purchase back these land shares. And in fact, if we had not, we have completed that purchase. It was completed in 2004, and the $1.2 million that we used to purchase those shares was far from a loan. It was a purchase of performing assets in the maintenance fund. And what we did, once we did buy them all back, per agreement with the division, was the shares they're still physically there. We have them all, and they are not to be sold again. And what we did is we fixed the payment and spread it out over 73 years, so that, and this was the agreement that I initially made with Mike Itzo. The trick was he wanted us to buy back the land shares, and the land shares were held in our general fund. They were not permitted to be held in the permanent maintenance fund because they were a diminishing asset. And when the cemetery stopped selling burial space, they would be worthless, and that's just the time the permanent maintenance fund would need them to be able to earn dividends to pay for the maintenance. So I understood that, and I said, here's the deal though. If I don't put them in my permanent maintenance fund where I can't use investing dollars to buy them, I'll never buy any more back, and we're stuck. So we made this arrangement whereby at that time we owned, 10% of the shares, and we were getting a payment every year, Whitehaven. And we'd take 25% of the payment and put that into the permanent maintenance fund, and we were building up a cash asset that would eventually meet $1.2 million, and then at that point retire those shares. In point of fact, once we finally paid them out, we figured it was like a shell game, to leave the shares in there. It was very costly to audit based on the formula under which they paid out. And so, again, with full agreement of our auditors and the division, we did at that time retire the shares and fix the payment. So, I really don't think the $1.2 million should be considered a loan. At this point, yes, it functions like there's a due-to set up that.
But it's a loan to the cemetery, if you will,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So, but the permanent maintenance fund owns those land shares,
Understood.
and they are a performing asset. And early on in the arrangement, the return is quite small. But as that asset is paid down, it's going to be huge, and it will all be paid back long before the cemetery is built out. We've got 70 acres at Whitehaven. We've got 3 or 4 acres already at Lakeview to be developed, and are looking to purchase another 4 to 7. We've got, and as cremation becomes more prevalent, we've got a couple 100-year horizon. So we're not in danger of having to limit our PM fund anytime that any of us will be around.
What were they used for originally?
They were originally part of a for-profit entity before the 1949 law came in and changed and made all
Okay.
cemeteries not-for-profit. There was a for-profit development company that started the cemetery that purchased land from area landowners, and then they were paying them back for their invested dollars based on sales. Problem was, there was a formula set up that determined what that payment would be, and it was around $100,000 a year, and it didn't matter a hoot what our net proceeds were. We could have showed a loss for the year of $50,000, $60,000 and still have to pay out $100,000 to the land share certificate holders based on what sales had been deeded in that year. It was a terrible arrangement for the cemetery. It was what I called at one point in time, and I think it's like a permanent mortgage on the cemetery. It would never be paid off. They
Right.
pay for the land and then keep paying and paying and paying. There was no end in sight to it. And if we hadn't taken it out when we did, it would have cost us, it was $100,000 a year. Over 73 years, that's over $7 million that the cemetery would have paid out.
Yeah, no.
I honestly, I don't think Whitehaven would be functioning today if we hadn't taken it out.
Now,
We
who's
did.
paying who now?
Now, it's simply a matter of every year, the cemetery's general fund puts the amount deemed to be the payment from the land share certificate holders as if it had come into the general fund as a dividend. We pay just about $17,000 a year in extra contributions to the permanent maintenance fund, and that gets tracked until it equals the full $1.2 million that we spent to acquire the shares. It was a fabulous.
That was probably
investment
formative for the
cemetery.
that was probably formative for the division philosophically in the board back when you and Mike worked on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good work. Any questions? Any other? Yeah,
I have a little bit more good news too.
sure.
I feel like one of those commercials. And there's more.
Good, and there's more.
The previously, I believe you said it was the approved land purchase from last time pending the financial review, called for a $90,000 purchase for about 7.5 acres of land with deed restrictions. And in the month since then, it turns out that the seller of the land, who is retaining that parcel with the house,
Yep.
has been approached by a fellow who wants to buy that land, but also specifically wants the land directly behind the house where we were going to put our maintenance building. And he wants that, and we could, if everybody comes to agreement on the price, and we can go ahead with this, we could end up buying a little bit less land, which would cost less money, but it's the prime land that would be the most saleable, and I've got another place where I could
You
put
got
the
another
maintenance
place
building.
on the purchased land.
So depending on how the negotiations go and the exact acreage, we could be as low as 35,000 instead of the 90. We wouldn't get the deed restrictions, but I think we could live without them if the land is appropriately divided
You wouldn't get the deed restriction
on
towards,
a part he's selling to this other fellow. He won't buy anything with any restrictions on it.
and those restrictions were to
Height
protect
of building
protect your
and-
view.
And nothing residential, or nothing commercial. But since then, I've had talks with the town of Gorham where this is, and they said, Andrea, in point of fact, for him to get his zoning changed there would be an uphill battle. And we would have the chance to participate in the discussion. The area that I was most concerned about, that I most want to control, is the big flat field that is just to the west of where our current boundary is. That's where I could envision multi-story townhouses and big things going up that we don't want to have happen.
All right, well, I'm glad you mentioned this to us because I think we'll have to motion again just to, I don't think that we need to get back into the details on the transaction, but to the extent that it changes, it changes the basis upon which we approved it, so.
But it would be 90,000 or less.
Right.
Would be the purchase price of the sale, and everything else.
There are no deed descriptions anywhere now?
There would be no restrictions. Well, obviously, and all the land that we control, and that's what I'm going to make sure that what the parcel that we get is the land that we need to control. Once we own it, we should be set.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that land, but the parcel where you were going to build behind the house, where you were going to build the office, if that were to be, if you were to get a 3-story building there,
It would
that's
be
likely.
really hard to do because it's on the edge of a ravine,
Mhm.
and they would have no access to the road to get back there.
All right.
And we,
And what's it currently zoned?
it's currently zoned residential.
I don't know that I have a problem with that in the sense that I think you can deal with it.
Thank you. It's only gonna get better if it gets less.
But what I would say is that, I mean, do any folks have comments on that?
No,
Or,
I
you know?
didn't have any problems with it.
All right, but I think that to the extent the deal changes, that has to be brought back to the divisions and council's attention. And that we'll leave it, since this is sort of legal technical, we'll have council have the approval authority. All right, that'll be my motion. It doesn't have to come back to the board, just keep Tony informed. The other piece, I guess I'm sort of fashioning a motion, if that's all right? All right. The other piece is with respect to repayments of the permanent maintenance loan, and I just can't get off liking that getting done early, all right? That's just me. And my proposal is that you just work with the division on that. If the division is satisfied with the payout that you're recommending, so be it. But if the division feels that it can be paid back earlier, I ask you guys to work it out, all right? And again, that would be, the final deal would be subject to council's approval.
Okay.
Fair enough? That sound like a good motion?
Sounds okay.
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. All right. Riverhurst Cemetery. Riverhurst Cemetery, is Riverhurst here, by any chance?
No.
Okay. So, land purchase. 24 grand, the owes 98. Not to mention the contribution to the permanent maintenance fund, which we shouldn't forget, which Andrew has pointed out. The fiscal look good. I didn't see the status of the PM fund there. Do we know how much they have in their PM?
6 million, I think,
Oh, okay.
roughly.
All right. And they mentioned 24,000, and then it goes up like 20 grand or something for improvements. What are we talking about with improvements?
It was a house that wasn't very well maintained. The owner recently passed away in the house and wasn't discovered for a while, so they're gonna gut the inside of the house. The number that Roger gave me was closer to $12,000. They've done this before. They own the property on both sides of the house. They own most of the residential properties on it's this street that's on the eastern side. So they intend to kind of refurbish it, the interior, and then rent it out as they're doing to other houses until time comes when they need more various space.
Yeah, that was a question. It looked like a long-term rental. I mean, they're refurbishing the house, and it seems like well, obviously their immediate intention is to convert this to a rental, but are they, when they're surrounded, this property is surrounded by the cemetery, right?
Well, the cemetery is on the west side of the house. The cemetery owns residence on the right side. It's currently being rented.
I see. I thought that was burial property, but no,
Not yet.
it's residential property. So this extends their residential holdings,
Yes.
and all of them can be converted.
Eventually.
Time
In
comes.
fact, we discussed it. I went in the house and as far as to tear a house down in that area would probably be more expensive than rehabbing the interior of the house based on asbestos remediation and what have you. So they feel that it's, not only are they going to be able to get the income now from renting, it just makes more sense to do that.
Right, and the payback, how's rental occupancy in the area? Do they have any problem renting?
Yeah, they don't.
Okay. So they're looking at, I think it was $900 a month, so say $1,000, $12,000 a year, so you're looking at about a 5-year payback, right? 4.5 year.
And the cemetery's landlocked. It's in an urban area, so they're trying to buy everything that they can.
Yeah, how's their capacity, their burial capacity? How much do they
I don't have an exact number, but like I said, they're landlocked. They have rivers behind them. They have commercial on one side, residential on the other side. I don't have a number of graves left. I don't
All
have
right. Burial rate, sales?
sales.
Probably about 500,000 in receipts.
Okay, so significant activity still.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, anything? Don't want to make a motion?
To approve purchase by the River Memorial Association.
Okay. Second. All in favor, say aye. I recommend approval to the court. All right. North Stew Bend. This is a little, this is an interesting one. So.
Oh, this, yeah.
Yeah. So, not necessarily good. Is North Stew Bend here?
No, we
Okay.
invited them.
We invited them.
All right. So, the land is being donated. They paid the legal fees, 0.25 acres. It's got an old church on it.
There's the church.
Yep. The burial lots at the Methodist Church are somewhat commingled with the cemetery, right? Can't really figure out whose is whose. That's interesting.
The petition mentions that. If you look at this has been going on for about 2 years. They were approached, and they approached us and brought it to Tony, and based on the idea that there's a promise to maintain that building from the church, or from the cemetery to the church, that is consideration. Therefore, we need approval. They didn't want to get approval. We let them know they had to get approval.
Right.
So then the application kind of came trickling in parts as opposed to a nice. The tax map shows that as a 2-acre parcel, including that 1/4 acre that the church is on, and then the remaining property that is the cemetery. And then when I looked at the legal description of the property to be conveyed, I went out with a tape measure and measured it out.
Wow. Yeah,
And
great.
it goes well into the existing burials of the cemetery. I think the cemetery's been burying on the church property for probably 50 years, 40 years, something like that. At least 100 graves.
And they fenced it, right?
Right. And the fence goes past the boundary, the pre-existing boundary of the cemetery to the, you can't see it in that photo, but to the, there's just room to drive between the fence and that building.
For about 50 years? I can't imagine a more open, notorious, and hostile.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It is.
all right, go ahead.
So, I guess they are aware of that.
But so it's not really that you can't tell which graves are which. It's that the cemetery has adversely occupied the land of the church.
I don't believe that the church had a separate active cemetery, operating at the same time that the cemetery was operating.
Okay, that's actually much better situation than I thought. So they want to take this on, and I note some concern in the file about their ability to maintain it fiscally. They get graves, but they only made one sale last year, so we're not talking about any need for graves, right? So what's the story? Why do they want it?
They use the church a couple times a year for services, and they take a donation at that time, and that donation goes towards the operation maintenance of the cemetery. Many of the cemetery board trustees are or were trustees or involved in this church. The president is actually the treasurer is Robert Williber. He's a reverend who was somehow involved in that church. He's got a very keen interest in that church. I spoke to the town supervisor at the time and asked if he had any issue with this building going, with the idea, I think these are $17,000 total assets.
19.
19,000 total assets in the cemetery. The town's position was that if it's conveyed, they'll probably raise the building because they're not going to maintain it. So they didn't have any objection to the transfer.
No, they would love to have it. So the cemetery is $19,000 in total assets, has $590 in its PM fund. Is that right? Okay. And how much does it project that it will cost to maintain the building?
They're saying that what they've said is that they've been maintaining it already. The volunteers that are volunteering at the cemetery are volunteering to maintain that building. So it doesn't seem to me that their expenses are going to go up substantially as long as they can continue to get the volunteers to do it. If you look at the building, it's over 100 years old. It's got a metal roof. It seems like it's been maintained. It's been painted. There's no electricity to it. So I really didn't get a good look inside except what I could see with my flashlight on my phone. But I don't think the building is going to have tremendous expenses in the short term.
So that's a wood exterior, not
Yes.
vinyl? Okay.
I understand the connection with the community. This is obviously a rural, right? It's a rural area.
Yeah, there's no electricity on that road. It's northern Oneida County. It's quite
Right.
woods.
But boy, oh boy, taking on that responsibility is a big step for a cemetery which clearly is struggling. I don't know that I wouldn't want to see some more community involvement. I mean, how supportive is the community? And
Well, the community that's involved with the cemetery seems to be, pushing for this. Didn't he ask if it could be conveyed to an individual?
Yeah, he has other options. His contention is that if the church wasn't there, they wouldn't get the donations they need to keep the cemetery going, and they're pretty much surviving on donations. And I don't know whether or not that's...
Well, that's the only reason they would do it. Look, I mean, it's not the only reason. Surrounding culture is important for a cemetery. But if it's going to cost them money, all right, and put them under, then it's not in their best interest to do.
Well, they could just let it disappear, the church, and not
Right,
do
and-
anything. There's
and
no
they're-
consequence if they don't care for it. Is that right? From
To the church? To the?
Consequence to the cemetery.
I don't think so. I think that they would like to have it. If it's going to go somewhere, they'd like it to go to them. But if it went somewhere else, I don't know what the consequence would be. I mean, you'd have to sort out who owns the land where the burial is, where the burials are made, and that might be expensive to claim adverse possession.
But the Methodist Conference wouldn't care what happened to the building, would they?
Well, if there's a higher hierarchy to their structure, the hierarchy might lay claim to it.
Well, they already own it, as I understand.
Yeah, and they're trying to dispose of it, because
Right.
they don't have a congregation.
Methodists are trying to get rid of a lot of these little churches, I know, because I've dealt with them. And so they're desperate and trying to find ways to do it.
Well, if you look at the petition, there's two petitions, because they have the petition under the Religious Appropriations Law, I think, to dispose of the property, and then they had to incorporate our requirements as far as, and the attorney is on behalf of the Methodists.
Right.
And so they're, they want to see this happen. They want it to.
They want to get rid of it.
Yeah, they haven't said that they don't care where it goes, but they're certainly pushing for this. Now, the legal fees, I mean, when I first looked at this, the biggest thing is the legal fees. They're thinking, I think, $2,500 for surveying and legal fees, and that was going to come in through donations. They already have, the church has donations, pledges for donations, and once they get an approval, they'll make good on those donations.
My question would be, would the Methodist Church consider sort of a continuing obligation to maintain the building in the event that the cemetery ran into hard times, something like that?
I was even thinking to restrict any cemetery funds from being utilized to maintain that building, that it all come from donations. Because even at $500 a year for maintenance.
But if they don't get the donations and the building starts to fall down, that's a hazard, nuisance, and pitfall. Going back to my common law time.
No, the church isn't, the Methodist Conference isn't putting any money into this?
Who's been maintaining
Yeah,
it up to this point?
No, I mean into the deal.
The legal fees are being paid by the
Parishioners, you're saying?
By the cemetery? By the what?
Oh, the
Cemetery.
contributions went to the cemetery,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that.
right?
The contributions, the pledges have been made to the cemetery to pay the legal fees in the survey. And so,
So the conference is not, to answer the question, it's not putting any money into the deal.
Right. I think they should be. I think,
And you've had experience negotiating with them or approving deals?
yeah,
So you've seen deals where they do indeed
yeah.
are flexible? Why don't we, I would like you to go back and express our concerns, all right? And I would be happy to entertain having both parties represented on the phone at the next board meeting, so they can tell us more about this. If there's, our concern is the viability of the cemetery in acquiring this. I mean, it's a responsibility.
so the upfront cost would be the legal fees and whatnot, and then
And
the
then the
continuing
continuing,
cost would be, if it was written in that no cemetery funds could be used.
I'd like some commitment from the Methodist Church, either upfront money. I'm throwing out ideas. The cemetery's got to, think of this and advocate for it and negotiate it. But some more protection for the cemetery.
Yeah, the cemetery has a segregated fund that the Methodists pay into, so much a month or a year or whatever, it's set aside for maintenance. There's all kinds of ways to do the deal, but I agree with Dan, I think there's some exposure there.
Yeah, generally, a small cemetery with a structure on a property is not a good deal for a cemetery.
Yeah. Because the what you describe in terms of the burial on the church property, I don't think that's ever going to become an issue. You can't. I mean, first of all, nobody's going to move to disinter.
Right.
It seems pretty clear that they win an adverse possession claim. So I don't think that is an inducement necessarily for the purchase. I just don't think it figures in. All right, so we'll table that, and you'll make a report. Perhaps the folks will be here on the phone. We don't have to make them come in just to chat with us about it next month. Do you have any other news before then? Circulate it to us, and we'll be ready. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, that concludes our public agenda for this meeting. So at this time, I open it up to folks here. I always look at David first, you know. You go last, yeah. You'll hold fire, I know. Okay. A lot of folks here today. This is pretty nifty. Is there anybody would like to address the board? Wow.
Shocking.
There you
Fleming
go.
For the New York State Association of Cemeteries, and in case you're wondering, for those of you who came in late, there is a NISAC board meeting today in Albany, so folks came up early so that they could participate.
Oh, how nice. That's wonderful.
A lot of our board members are here.
I thought you were all here to yell at us. But
No, and certainly has nothing to do with the Honorable Dick Bruns being here, but I would like to point out that the Vandalism Fund report indicates nearly $1 million in either pending contributions or granted, and the state legislature has only provided $500,000 for the year. And obviously we make this point repeatedly, but it is a big concern to the association. We felt so strongly about it, we asked for legislation to be introduced, which was passed both houses of the legislature unanimously and vetoed by the governor. And certainly I know there was a concern that the $9 million that had been taken from the fund and used for general government purposes, certainly a concern to the entire cemetery industry in New York. This is an example. I mean, we're looking at a $500,000 deficit for the current year in payments, and while it is frequently said, and the cemetery board has no control over this, you're approving applications, their payment may be delayed. And I personally have some experience with the problems associated with those delays in payments and increased work for cemeteries who have to go back and get additional bids and try to get these projects done where vandalism damage has been done. So it is a real concern for the association.
I understand. And usual response, and it's a true response, and you semi-addressed it, is that the board's never turned down a valid claim, and payment's always been made. I acknowledge there have been delays at times. Hopefully you won't face that circumstance this year, but I understand.
We would welcome that. That'd be great. And also just wanted to, again, thank the board for the opportunity to comment on the proposed regulations for the financial reporting. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you and try to come together on something that we can support when the regulation continues on through the process. And we certainly make ourselves available if there are any additional meetings that need to be done with staff or Mr. Malone or someone else. We would be happy to get some folks together to help.
Yep, that would be great. I think this is one of those rules which maybe we can do by consensus rulemaking, you know, so.
We've done it in the past. It's been very successful. I know the cremation reg is an example of that, where we all just sat down and tried to see where we could come together. And certainly we'd welcome that opportunity again. On the pet regulation, it seems that we're not going to have that same position. We'll be happy to provide our comments today, but we still remain opposed to the regulation as it's proposed. But we do have some specific suggested amendments as well.
Okay, okay.
So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chat with us? Just say hi. You can all say hello. All right. Well, enjoy your meeting today, your conference, and thanks for coming by. What we can do is I will motion to go into executive session for legislative and litigative matters as well as personnel matters this time. And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll do that. All right. Welcome back. We did have one motion, which was seconded and approved in executive session. That was setting the salary of our new director, Louis Polishuk. And with that, I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.